Good morning, good afternoon, good time zone, friends. Welcome back to the Micro Solidarity podcast, where we talk to fabulous community organizers like Brooke Bauman to see what we can learn from each other as we are reconstructing the social fabric one thread at a time.
I love that. Was
Brooke,
that top of your
it
head?
just came off the top of my head. It just came out like that.
Incredible.
Yeah. And this is us stitching a thread together.
Mm,
Brooke has just finished running Vibecamp with obviously a huge team, but Brooke's the one at the front of the boat going, "Whoa!"
yeah.
And it's been a few runs now, and every year we do a debrief together so that we can juice any lessons from what is it like to, yeah, what is it like to run a big event for a very dispersed and very weird and diverse network of people. Um, is there anything useful that we can kind of like translate into other social contexts? And also, I think the other thing I'm interested in, like the network that Vibecamp serves is also like my network and I care about it and I just kind of want to know how it's
Yeah.
doing. So thank you for taking the time and being courageous about putting your lessons out in public. I think it's awesome, this open source learning.
Yeah.
Maybe we can start with like just the network. Like what's your read on how we're doing? What's the state of the network?
It's incredible. I was just thinking about that this morning because a ton of new office hours have popped up. So for anybody listening who doesn't know what office hours is, it started in San Francisco. Deepface started the first one. It was something he'd done with friends in the past in Albuquerque and kind of like transposed it over to teapotish scenes. And they started meeting weekly well over a year ago. It's been quite a while. And it's a really lovely sort of Shelling point. I don't go very often, but I love knowing that Tuesday night I can just show up and see people if I want to. And then there was like a couple other cities that started doing them, and they all bring this duck. There's now a condor, so who knows what's happening with that? But there's Whiskey Tuesday created a website to track the different cities that it happens in. There's a few that are international, and there's just been kind of an explosion of them in the days following Vibecamp, which has been. I just tweeted about it this morning because it's really deeply meaningful for me because I care about kind of like deep connections and I care about impact and the things that can happen at one event, especially, 4-day event, are pretty limited. And it's really reliant on people carrying that energy forward and everybody kind of bringing different pieces of this puzzle. And I think that the combination of office hours, Vibe Camp, and Fractal as social tech is really phenomenally powerful. And I know this is kind of like European erasure because you guys are doing a ton of really cool stuff over there, and I'm not quite as plugged in over there, but I'm watching from a distance and really appreciate it. But Fractal is starting to spread now. I think there are people starting Fractal Boston. Who knows what that's going to look like? And so Fractal's kind of like office hours is local light touch. Fractal is local, but like deeper connections. It's both economic and it's co-living. They have their boot camp and things like that. And then Vibe Camp is sort of where you go and hear about all these things maybe, and you take that
Mm.
energy back home. So these three pieces of social tech working together synergistically it's really cool to watch, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. And my framing, like when people ask me what is Teapot, one of the first things I'll explain, it's like it's a network of people who decided that the internet is like a first class place to socialize and make friends.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now we started finding friends, but what do we want to do? Like we want to live near each other, we want to do projects together, we want to start things. So like it's really cool to see that. That actually it does actually seem like there's a sense of progress. There are like deepening like higher stakes collaborations and friendships and partnerships and stuff happening. And yeah, Vibe Camp seems to be like a really essential induction point and a focal point, a shelling point for lots of people to get together. And yeah, this is what I want to talk about. It's like, how was it this year? What's it been like to organize? I've been picking up sort of not just from you, but from lots of Twitter organizers, the sense of like, this is exhausting. There's too much work. There's too much risk. There's not enough money. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get like more into the detail of that, and yeah, tell us what you're learning about organizing.
Yeah. Do you have a specific, I mean, there's a lot that I could say in response to that. Do you have a specific direction that you want to start in?
Well, first of all, how was camp this year?
I have had I have had after every event someone, at least one person, maybe it's not everybody, but at least one person tell me that was our best event yet, for them. And this was the first one that I came away from. I think that was our best event yet. There were lots of issues, which I'm sure we will get into later. And overall, the I think the experience of most people was better than it has been
Mm,
at past ones. And it was also our second biggest event, so that's exciting. We've been, it's kind of like always that thing of like how do you grow and maintain the vibes sort of question. And we'll see what, I think that's one of the things that happened after the first year was we got this, internet popularity, and the second year blew up, and we weren't quite prepared for that. And that was a little bit bigger than it should have been. So we'll see what decisions we make to try to address that if the
mm,
popularity of this one carries forward to next year. Um, but it last year was, and I actually don't know if we did one of these debrief calls after Vibecamp
mm,
3. That was Vibecamp 3 is almost like the forgotten Vibecamp in a little bit. It was very, very small. It was pretty intimate, but it was the first year where the tenor of conversations changed, both within the org team and with attendees, where instead of being like, oh, we have to fix this thing and that thing, and like, oh, it went well, but like, ugh, and it turned into, oh, we could do this cool thing or that other cool thing. And this year that happened as well, but at a bigger scale. I feel like this is the first time I've really felt like attendees are stepping up in a large way to help us, both in like internal org things and stuff with the event itself, which is good because we were this lead up to this one was really hard. I think a lot
mm,
of us were starting to burn out, and we kind of need some more help.
mm, mm. Could you say any more about, like, from your perspective, if this one is the best one, like what were the structures or the design choices you made that have supported that?
So some of this is just we've had this kind of solid core of people who come every year. So they kind of go into it knowing what's up. It just immediately when you got there, it felt relaxed, which was
Mm,
very
mm,
unusual for Vibecamp because it's been a pretty intense sort of, oh my God, we're meeting people from the internet. I think meeting people from the internet is less weird now for this scene than it was when we started. And we also, this was our third time back at this site. I had to count. So people are starting to just like the physical environment is less strange for a lot of people. But even the first timers, I remember, we always caution people like it takes like 24 hours for your nervous system to settle into a new place. And if you're having trouble in the first day, just give it a little time. And I talked to some people on Friday, a handful of people. I didn't make an effort to go out and interview people, but I talked to 4 or 5 different people who didn't really know anybody going in. It was their first vibe camp, and they were just like, I had an amazing first day. And we had a thunderstorm that it would just downpour lightning. Everybody had to run to their tents on the day that we opened, and people were still like, this is great. So I'm still sort of thinking through that and trying to pick apart what actually led to,
uh,
especially the new people coming into it, feeling that grounded. I think one thing that I did partially, why did I start doing that? Partially actually to sell tickets to get more people thinking about Vibecamp, but I started sending out pretty regular emails that were just very like, usually I will think really hard about them and I will add every single bit of detail in one email because I don't want to spam people. And this time I was just like, you guys are going to get spammed. I said, one about the weather and one about cabins and one about this and one about that. And I think that could have contributed to it, just like a sense of like, oh, the people in charge are communicating things. It is, I'm not sure. I need to think more about it, but it
mm,
was a really
mm,
interesting difference.
mm. I also wonder how much of it is up to you and how much of it is just like maturing that's happening in the core community that keeps coming back, that
Right.
they show up relaxed and so then other people will relax around them.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of what I was getting at with the very first one. I think that's the biggest thing. That was what I felt last year. It was really like not a lot of new people, and it just felt like a friend, like big friend groups coming to hang out with each
Mm,
other again. It felt pretty chill. And
mm,
so my guess was either we had to like reach some kind of point where like the return people are just they kind of know what's up, or that event was just really small and it was kind of like you have to wait to a bigger event to tell. And so I think that's the biggest thing.
yeah, yeah. And what's your read on like how do I describe it? Like, how is the culture staying the same or evolving or adapting? Like, how was there like, is there a sense of like dilution? New people come in and they don't really understand the shared language or.
Yeah, yeah. So I had no idea. We had this big burst of ticket sales at the very last 12 hours because that's that's the way these things go. And none of us were really prepared for how many people who are didn't even know the term teapot. Like, I don't know how they got there. There were a bunch of them. Like, people, like, how did you get here? How did you hear about this? Which is great, and kind of what I want and what we want, I think, is just like bring this to more people. If they fit with the vibe, then maybe they can join Twitter, or maybe they'll just be our offline homies. But yeah, so that's one of the big things that we're going to be thinking through in the next week or two is that we weren't prepared with like media policy in particular, but norms in general. We've kind of been skating by on like people just know what the norms are because they hang out with us on Twitter. And now we have enough
Yeah.
people coming who aren't on Twitter that we need to rethink that in a big way. So I've got a team of people who are helping me think through seed comments for Polis. Do you know what Polis is? Yeah, so and for anybody listening who doesn't know what it is, it's a tool for digital democracy to kind of gauge sentiment in a community on policy decisions. So we're going to be doing that on whether we should change our, I think that Vibecamp started out, everybody was very into illegibility and super into privacy and things like that, and it might be time to revisit our media policies. I didn't push them. I sort of got into an
Mm.
emotional snarl about it. This is on me because I wanted to change them, or like my intuition was that we should change them, and I didn't prioritize it. And so we were in a situation where a lot of people didn't know that the norm was supposed to be asked before you even take a picture. And that's on me. And we're working through what that's going to look like in the future and figure out where people stand on that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of these ones, right, where you have this clash of expectations that can then just like ripple through and cause all kind of drama.
Yeah.
And I mean, personally, the idea of articulating your norms is also like it's kind of tiresome, like necessary beyond a certain scale,
Yeah.
absolutely necessary, I think. But like, do we really have to? It feels like kind of a chore.
Yeah, it'll be. I mean, I do think now that we have to. I mean, I've been thinking about Burning Man as a model where
Yeah,
there are these 10 principles and the kind of like these norms for wearing lights and all those things. And the expectation is that is communicated to you by the people who bring you. And
yeah,
Five Camp is a little bit different because you can just come not knowing anybody, but ideally we want clear enough norms and values that if somebody violates one, it doesn't have to filter back to us, that like the
yeah,
people around them feel empowered, like they know what the norms are and they feel empowered to like communicate them to other attendees. Otherwise it just will never work. So in order to do that, we have to formalize them to some degree. Even if we change them over time, we need to have something.
yeah, yeah. Is it important to you that anyone can sign up, or do you see a future where it's kind of like plus ones and some invitation and vouching system?
So we actually tried that. We did that with Vibe
Yeah,
Clips. We had a referral system, and I think we have consistently taken a look at growth patterns in the past and been like, we're going to get so big, we can't handle it. We got to figure out all these things. And then we're like, oh, we are not big enough yet. We were not selling
mm,
tickets. I think, 2024 was a big year oh, we are maybe competing against ourselves. I don't think the scene can quite support this many events. And so we ended up scrapping that. I mean, and that's one of the things that I found the most unfortunate about sort of being in this quote unquote business is that uh, in order to keep it alive, you have to make decisions around money, which is kind of like a reactive thing. It's not as like proactive as I would like to be, and so that's one of the things where I would love to have that kind of system in place, and we needed to sell tickets. You have
yeah,
minimums you have to hit, you have to pay the site and things like that. That being said, I think that one of the things that I want to kind of talk through with the team as we continue the debrief process internally is, and I just had somebody actually messaging me this morning. It's like, you gotta just to put this on your radar. I'm hearing a lot of people who want to take a bunch of friends next year, and if you extrapolate that forward, you might have a very big event, and who knows what will happen by the time next year comes around. But I think I could see something where maybe we have a cap on people who have never been before. It's 30%
mm,
of the
mm,
total attendance or
mm,
something. I think as long as you don't like there's some line there where the ratio is fine and you have new blood and it's bringing in new energy and things like that, but it's not overwhelming the existing vibe. And I think that's something we can probably experiment with.
yeah, yeah. Incidentally, 30% has always been the number, the rule of thumb that I've used for my events. Like, so you have like a super majority of people that are already familiar, they're already holding down the norms.
I may have gotten it from a conversation with you. That might be
Yeah.
why it was in my head.
It just kind of happened emergently. It's what worked for us.
Yeah, great.
So you mentioned you're sort of hinting at like the stress before the actual event. What are the contributing factors?
So I was commenting, I have a few different thoughts that came to mind when you asked that question. One thing that's been fun to observe that I don't know that I would have thought through, but makes sense now that I have been it. I think this is what it feels like to grow as an organization. It's you are doing things and you get like more capacity and you take on more things, and all of a sudden you start dropping a bunch of balls that you weren't dropping before, and then you have to bring on new people, and then you're doing things and everything's great, and then all of a sudden you're like, why did I forget those three things that I've remembered really well in the past? And then you have to bring on more. So we've hit that a few times, and I think that we hit that this year to some degree beforehand. I dropped a lot of balls, and I feel like it's been sort of, I overestimated my my ability to like run multiple events. I think Vibecamp had gotten easier in a lot of ways. We've really automated a lot of things. We're starting to learn a lot of systems. There's still a ton of things to improve, but we do improve enough every year that it feels good. And so I was like, we can do a bunch of other new events. And I agreed to run Network Society Camp with a group of people. And that took place the beginning of October. And then the beginning of November, we ran School for the Socially Inept. The team came back and was like, we're going to run out of money if we don't run another event. It's fine. We don't need your help very much. And it turns out it's very hard to design an entirely new event, and it need a lot of help. I'm pretty much the person who can market these things on the team, and which takes a lot of thinking and then other things. So that was ambitious. I came out of Network Society Camp with 20 days to sell all of the tickets. We had sold like 12 or something for School for the Socially Adept. And so I just went into like extreme try everything, go, go, go mode, and then was going to take some time to think through things. And I think that so I'm realizing now I have an autoimmune thing, which I had gotten diagnosed back when I had long COVID, but I kind of just was like, oh, well, I'm feeling better now. This is fine. But I think the mold, I was exposed to mold over the winter, and I think that re-triggered a lot of my symptoms. So I've been finding my energy levels have been, trending upwards. But over the winter was just hard in a lot of ways. And then yeah, I thought we were doing pretty well with ticket sales. And that is again something that I feel like I would have been tracking better had I kind of not had my mind all over the place. But then we kind of had a realization like, oh, we're not gonna have enough money to make our payment. We're not gonna hit our minimum. And then that's kind of we didn't come out of that. I think we had like 60 more tickets to sell the day before our sales closed or something. I'm just like, I'm not even counting this anymore. There's no way. It might have been a little less than that, but it was enough that it was like, we're not gonna hit that. And then we did magically clear it. Um, so the money stress is hard, especially because we had three people on year-round payroll, none of them making more than like I think I made the most like 47,000 a year. So we're not out here rolling in money from your the people buying tickets, but it's hard when people, I'm in a situation where it's not just me. People are relying on me, and then, yeah. So that was a little bit rambling, but I think those are some of the big
Yeah.
things.
So this is what I was tracking. I didn't know about the health stuff, which is like, that can happen to anyone at any time.
Yeah.
But the money
Yeah.
stuff, that's what I've been paying attention to, especially this year, that it does seem that people really, in theory, they really strongly value having organizers put the energy and take the risk to like put on events and like, hey, look, here's the place where you get to meet all your friends from the internet and turn them into real life friends. Like people have so many, yeah, just transformative experiences, and they make lifelong friendships, and people are meeting their fiancés and everything's happening like that. Um, but I started to see this year with different organizers, like people are not buying the tickets to the thing, and just seeing the amount of stress that puts on the organizer. It's like, do
Yeah.
you know how much it costs to hire a venue like this? Like, there is just like day after day of losing sleep, right? Like it's just a thing there on your shoulder going,
Yeah.
and like I'm really not saying this to like lay some kind of guilt trip on people, like they're not they don't care enough or they're not trying hard enough. It's not that at all. It's just like as people are making their decisions about where to spend their time and money, it seems like what we have been doing in previous years of organizing meetups kind of like doesn't cut through in the same way that it did before. And I'm like, do we need to do something different? Is it a kind of like step back and reevaluate what's needed? Is it like, maybe we should just give up on this idea of being paid for community organizing and get paid for other stuff, and then you do your community organizing out of surplus, because you've got a good high paying job and you can take a few weeks out to run a big event every year. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Have you got any way into thinking about Like, what's the significance? You know, the low ticket sales is like such a small and sort of mundane pointer, but it's pointing to something, I think.
Right. So I don't know how universally helpful this is, but the things that we are choosing to experiment with this or around this, we've lowered our minimum. So that was a mistake that we made was, oh, we think we are going to be able to sell a bunch more tickets. I think the reasoning last year was like, oh, we're not going to be competing with ourselves anymore. We're just going to be running the one event a year. I will have time and space to like think through marketing and do a really big push. And it turns out when I'm stressed about money, I'm not good at marketing. I think I think that, I can't even always pick it up, but I am convinced that people can pick it up when I am like deeply excited about Vibecamp and when I'm stressed about Vibecamp. And it works when I am deeply excited and it does not when I am stressed. So, which is, it's a skill issue. There are ways to kind of like let go of the stress even when we are running out of money. But that's sort of been an active thing I've been noticing and thinking about. But we made our minimum too high because we get a discount when it's more people. And so we lowered our minimum for next year. We're, thinking through that. And then also, um, it made sense to have people employed year round last year when we were doing multiple events. And that's just not a model we want to stick with right now. Yeah, for a number of reasons. And so I think that, and also I think it contributed to the stress. I think that was one of a number of threads, some of which I've mentioned, some of which I haven't, of we had so much time that, and it's good in some senses to be thinking of like what cool other ways can we expand impact or how can Vibecamp help, whatever. But you really want to be focusing on setting up the event itself. And sometimes having that much time isn't good because then you're like, well, I have to be working, but then there's not actually you kind of your idea of how much needs to be done and when gets a little bit skewed. So I think that actually contributed. So I think for this next year, we are, well, we ran out of money. So Colby and I haven't been paid in weeks since before Vibe Camp. We are going to try to reimburse us for this time, but we're going to be shutting down year-round operations. There will be some amount of people who are thinking about things and kind of doing a few hours a week here and there. But then next year, maybe we're looking 3 or 4 months. We're going to kind of sketch this out a little bit more in detail in the coming weeks and figure out exactly how much time we're going to need. So 3 or 4 months, solid, high intensity push. And I think that will open up a few different avenues for us. I think that, there are just on a personal level, I'm still kind of running the marketing and the comms and like kind of thinking through vision and hiring and that stuff. And then also like safety. There's a few different areas that I'm still kind of like the default one, which is that's kind of too much for me. So I think that if we are only doing 3 months, then we can pay a bunch more people some smaller amount of money to kind of take over some of these roles. And, it continues to be an interesting process to try to figure out where the line is between people who are volunteering their time versus people who are getting paid for their time and how much and all of that. But I think that's a much more sustainable model. It remains to be seen whether any of us can, Colby, I believe, is looking for a job. He has not told me exactly what kind of job he wants yet, so I haven't tweeted about it. But we're all kind of hoping to find some form of income that will allow us to take that time because Vibe Camp is really important to all of us, but we do kind of need to pay rent.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I feel like we got lucky for a few years. Kind of like there was such a high demand, people feeling like they're being underserved, like there's just no good places to meet the people that I want to be with. I'm just not getting these kind of opportunities. And so I felt like we got lucky for a bit, and now we have to get more creative about what are we offering and is it relevant? And I think this is across the board. It's not just for running these kind of events. There's a sort of it does feel like the volatility and the evolution in the marketplace just keeps accelerating, where it's like you did something, it went awesome. You did it the second time, it was pretty good. And then the third time, it's like no one cares anymore. Or like it just seems like things change so quickly that it's quite easy to
Yeah.
sort of lose the
Right.
mandate of heaven somehow.
Yeah. I know on a personal level, I've been a lot more interested. I'm like, okay, I've done top of funnel. I keep being like, I don't need more friends. I've got too many friends, and then I'll meet somebody really cool. I'm like, okay, I have room for one more friend. But in general, I'm not going to a bunch of events in order to meet a bunch of new people. That's no longer a need of mine, and I think that's reflected. I think that's, there are other people who are kind of at a similar stage of that journey where, you're in exploit mode instead of explore. And
Yeah.
then it's kind of like, once you have those deeper connections, what do you do with it? And I think that's a pretty common thing in the scene also, is this idea of like, let's build real things in the real world together. So I'm really interested in, a series of retreats on, small, like curated group of people where you have goals, you are writing blog posts, you are discussing specific topics. And I wonder how many other people are getting closer to there. I think it's important to have the events. We kind of like an ongoing, like, escalator thing of like new people can come, and here's the infrastructure to meet the other new people, to do top of funnel, and then here's the next step when you're ready for that one. So you kind of want all of this happening at the same time, and I think we're sort of collectively figuring out what that looks like.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's just intuitively where my energy has gone is like, with our place now at Casa Tilo, we're having a co-living week, sometimes 2 weeks, 15, 20, 25 people. It's smaller, it's calmer, you get to know everyone and you can do some work. You can say,
Yeah,
I'm launching my website and I need some companionship to think it through and whatever. Like,
yeah,
you still have some of the effervescent sort of party, sort of I'm so excited to meet new people energy, but it's kind of balanced out with like it's also real life. There's a bit
right,
more, yeah, a bit more of a balance. And we'll see how that goes. It's a new experiment. We're only doing it a few
yeah,
months, but people are really appreciating the experience that they're having here. Like you are watching people have transformative experiences just like they do at the big intense like
right,
sort of festival style events. But yeah, it's a little bit more like real life, and maybe this is just part of the general trajectory. Is like I don't want to just have 3 or 4 days of feeling
right.
good. Like I want this to shift how my life looks.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was at, I mean, maybe even around the time of the first Vibe Camp where I was like, guys, I want you to see what it feels like to be able to walk to your Twitter friend's house. And it's just, it's not enough, it's not really enough days to get that kind of feeling. Although just as a side note, I was really surprised to hear I've sort of, with our cabins, so Vibe Camp is a mix of tent camping and staying in cabins. And right out the gate, we were like, cabins are a way for people to build relationships, starting before they go to Vibe Camp. You can make a group chat, you can come up with a theme, you can decorate it. And there are a couple legacy cabins now. Peaks Playhouse is the one that's really doing really, I mean, they have a little, they bring like snacks and supplies and the decorations and chairs, and it's really cute to watch that evolve. But for a lot of people, they just kind of buy a cabin ticket and then show up. And so I hadn't been putting as much thought into how, we did in the early years a lot, like how do we get these people to talk to each other? What kind of like relating games do we encourage them to do and all of that? And there just wasn't enough momentum behind it. And that I just keep randomly hearing from people. I just read there was somebody's tweet, I think today, who was just like, like the joining this cabin was the best decision I made. And like, somebody else told me it felt like coming home to his housemates. And so I don't even know how that happened. I didn't do it, but but it was really incredible. And I also have felt very strongly from the beginning that, places like Vibe Camp are where you go to meet the people to go do the kinds of things that you are doing. I think that is the far
Yeah.
more impactful way to relate
Yeah.
to people and to experience connection and meet new people. I much prefer the let's do highly aligned homies, but over a longer period of time where it feels like real life, but like a little bit different is much more appealing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, this thing about the cabins, I'm like, I have literally, it's been 7 years that I've been harping on with micro solidarity about how important it is to have like smaller little subgroups inside of the big thing. And that's
Yeah.
like where so much of the good action happens. And I'm like a grumpy old man saying like, "Oh, I tried to tell you so." And people just have to figure it out for themselves, right?
There are a few different areas like that for Vibe Camp where I'm trying to get a little bit better about this, about not just saying this, because there's a few things that I have thought about and I either didn't have capacity or there wasn't energy there or whatever. And now people are coming up like, oh, we should do this thing. I'm like, yes, you should. Please do.
Yeah, good luck with that. I believe in you. Yeah. Was there anything about the organizing this year that just felt like a step up, like that you just made a good lesson in the last couple of iterations? You're like, oh yeah, that really runs smoothly now.
Colby. Colby is the engine. I mean, we have talked about this before, and he just continues to get better, and he's just been incredible to watch. The Vibe Camp becoming a lot more professional is largely Colby's doing. He
Mm.
I can't praise him enough. It's been really cool to watch. He's kind of running the volunteers. I think next year we'll probably have a person in between him and the volunteers so he can focus more on just like straight ops, but he is just really on top of it. We're working through a bunch more documentation than we have in the past. We did end up we made a checklist that I think I shared with you for our conference event. I don't think we've done one for Vibecamp. That's been, we have talked about this plenty of times. I'd love to have more documentation. I think we're getting there. There's
Mm.
maybe a wiki in the works that I think would be a good place for a lot of this. Um, but I also feel like it's a little bit hard when people come up to me and like, I want to do a Twitter camp with 30 people, because the sort of things that we had to take into account are very different than when you have a 30-person camp. But I think the scene is on a good track of getting to a point where we're sharing more of this information just collectively and like, oh, talk to this person or there's this website or whatever. Um, I think I had another thing there, but I am going to think on it for a moment.
I'm thinking about food, conflict management, website, guest communication, safety, like so there's so many parts of the system that make it
Right.
work.
Yeah. Um,
Anything that was surprisingly easy this year.
I think most of the event was for most people. I think I
Mm,
am the one who had a hard time, and that
mm,
is because of the whole. So I'll just give you the entire rundown. I'm sure you know about part of it, but I will tell the whole story for anybody listening to this who does not. Some weeks before Vibe Camp, I had Ken the Cowboy reach out to me and say, "Hey, I've been working with these people on the Zizian documentary. Can they come film at Vibe Camp?" And then I stopped doing anything else for 2 weeks, and I did nothing but have conversations with people. I talked to like my ethics council and I talked to some attendees on kind of like both sides of the like we like journalists or we hate journalists. I talked to the team. I just lots and lots and lots of conversations and thinking, and I ended up deciding to allow them to come film. And I, wrote up a statement and I really prepared myself emotionally for this. I was telling me this is going to be a big splash and we're like going to drop something soon. There wasn't a peep. There was like maybe one little thread about the Zizians. And it was kind of a little bit validating-ish. I need to think more about this. But when Ken tweeted a screenshot of an event that was come tell us all the good things about the Zizians. And again, for anybody listening who does not know about the Zizians, people kind of refer to it as the trans murder cult. They have some deep ties with rationality. No one who killed anyone has ever been to Vibe Camp, but there have been a lot of feelings about all the things. So Ken tweeted, I think a day or two before Vibe Camp started, this thing that made it seem like reading it as these are journalists they are outsiders. They are coming here with a gotcha to try to trick us into saying something good about the Zizians on camera, where it's not our cozy little circle of high decouplers who can tell the difference between all these things. And so that is when everything blew up. When I was already on site, deep in like
mm.
we are like physically putting pillows in places around the venue. So I had to kind of stop what I was doing again. And then the thing that was kind of validating to make me felt like it made me feel like the 2 weeks that I spent really focusing hard on it, that I kind of did well if that was the reaction that could have happened. Except then I'm like, maybe I should have been playing 5D chess and triggered that kind of reaction, because the whole thing was I said it that early because I wanted people to like get
Yeah.
and process the feels before they got to the event. And so I spent the last like day or so and I was like watching the weather report. Oh, it's going to be raining and everyone's going to show up upset and like blah. And I couldn't really plan a bunch of things out very well, because the decision that I made was to kind of look them in the eye, have a face-to-face conversation with the people doing the documentary and like really kind of ask very pointed questions about their intentions and things like that after they arrived. And they didn't come until like late afternoon on Thursday, as attendees are getting there. And I didn't know what to say about it during opening ceremonies because I wasn't going to make a decision until I spoke to them, and I wanted to do a town hall, but I couldn't put that. Oh, sorry, let me just realized. So that was a lot of my vibe camp. It was very, very
Mm.
intense. And then the conversation with the documentarians went well. I didn't really say too much during opening ceremonies. This was my first, it was our hottest event. It was usually, I will often get to a point where I need to sit down a few times because I'm getting lightheaded by the last day of an event. This is the first time it happened at the first day. And thankfully, Bex ran most of opening ceremonies for me because I could not stand up. And I did a town hall with the documentary crew and Ken and some of the people with the biggest concerns in a smaller venue, not during opening ceremonies. And I think that went pretty well. I don't think we, I think there are people who have kind of opinions all over the place. One of my biggest things was like, if Vibecamp brand gets tainted, I mean, maybe I shouldn't be saying this in public, but like Vibecamp can end,
Mm,
and then we can send out an email to everybody who's been to a Vibe Camp and say, hey, coincidentally, the same group who ran Vibe Camp, I mean, it's completely different event with a totally different name, but happens to be the same weekend in the same venue. Like it's not the end of the world. And I think that was pretty compelling for people. And I had a bunch of other reasons, but that media thing really took over my experience. And I think a lot of the team was like, wow, this is going really well. It's really smooth. And I'm just like,
us, we just I met a new German friend, and he pronounces it Vibe, so maybe it could be Vibecamp.
Yeah.
On seriousness though, like as you've just told that story, that I hope this is not harsh, but the thing that strikes me is like that sounds like so much energy for something that's not at all related to the mission. Like, why is the critical organizer having to like spend all of this energy on like some like what's the payoff? Like,
It's because it's in line with my mission, which is part of what I've been having to navigate with different people. It is ultimately a higher level goal for me, and this is one of the things that I spend a lot of time thinking through, to kind of spread Vibe Camp culture than it is to run Vibe Camp itself. And I think even in the worst case scenario, Vibe Camp doesn't really shut down; it just changes. I don't think worst case scenario is Vibe Camp shuts down, but I think even if that were the worst case, it's still like I think the world would be a better place if more people were curious and kind and all of these things, and if getting on a major streaming platform. And I think there's it was taking a risk, but I think that there's very little chance you could come spend a few days at Vibe Camp and then not hold it up as a counterexample to the Zizians. And I don't think it's gonna play a big part, but there may be a few
mm,
people who see that and go, oh,
mm,
that feels like home. And that's something I care about.
mm, yeah. I've just seen various kinds of documentaries about avant-garde subcultures, and they seldom do it justice, let's say.
Yeah, and that's a risk.
Yeah. But this is one of these, it's kind of unavoidable at some point, right? It's like, oh, now we're in the middle of this thing and it's on me, and that's what it's like to be in a leadership role, and you just have to
Right.
deal with what's coming up.
And so yeah, those were a few of my other like key reasonings behind this. One was that our previously our two major like media outlet mentions also included the words Vibeconf, and I think that trans murder cult is a step up personally. So and I think like
Have you actually written a list of the words?
Well, no, because I think there's only that I know of. There's only been two kind of mainstream. They both were Curtis Jarvin hit pieces, and like he went to this tech event called Vibe Camp, and then he didn't like it and left and started, did this. So there's going to be already some amount of misrepresentation and bad associations. I think cancel culture
Mm,
is on its way out. I remember, and this is a fairly recent realization for me, but and even just like the news cycles. I remember Donald Trump kind of like almost getting killed and being like, "Whoa, the world just changed," and then 4 days later, everybody had forgotten. Just like things are happening so fast here at the in the doorway to the singularity that I think like things are forgotten pretty easily. And yeah, I also think that this scene is too close to multiple centers of power for people to not take a look at it eventually. The story is going to be told, and this was an opportunity for us to like have somebody in the editing room who's been to every Vibe Camp.
mm. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't really factor in that. Like Ken, it's not a random person
Right.
showing up, right? It's Ken. He's like right in the middle for a long time.
Yeah. And he
Yeah, that's
won't have
interesting.
he won't have veto power over what ends up in it, but he will be there advising. And
Yeah.
is very, very dedicated and cares a lot about Vibe Camp, even if he can be, and I have said this to him directly, this is not me shit talking him behind his back, even if he can be a little bit of a dumbass sometimes.
Lovable dumbass.
Yeah.
I Yeah, I never heard the full story until now, but I did know that this was like one of the big firestorms, I guess. Was there other stuff going on that took a lot of this kind of conflict energy that absorbed your attention?
Kind of most of it was media related. There was a
Yeah.
separate but related one because we had two crews of people filming there. One was a group of attendees who want to come back year over year and make a proper Vibecamp documentary in some number of years. And that was fine. People were fine with that. We also allowed them to live stream, and balls got dropped in a bunch of different ways with that. So we are in the process of kind of investigating where, like, how all of that happened.
Yeah.
And like 90% of it is going to come down on me, and we will make sure that we have clear policies in place. We may just not allow live streaming again. I'm not sure ultimately, but the first step is getting out this poll list so we can get a sense of broadly where people stand on all these different issues around media policy. So yeah, the media stuff was in different ways was the big thing.
Mm, mm. How much of your time do you think you're doing politics versus organizing?
Oh, great question. A lot now.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel that way until the film stuff. And so maybe next year won't be. I think this was kind of an unusual set of circumstances, but I do feel like for several big long chunks, and I could only do that. I probably would have just had to say no to everybody if Colby worked just so fantastic. I knew
Yeah.
that I could step away
Yeah.
because I knew
Yeah.
that Colby was going to make sure things were still running.
Yeah. That's funny. You spent your time is being freed up. It's like, oh, we can use you over here. Let's have a big firestorm. Um, my friends ran a big festival, and a couple of years ago they had, it's like a very extremely liberal, shall we say. People can do anything they want. And there was a big event which was a slave auction. And you can't imagine how much, like, just such heartbreak, such anguish, such an extreme amount of conflict and negotiations and
Yeah.
resolutions. And wow, it really pushed the limits of what people were up for.
Wow.
So
You
maybe
see,
something to look forward to next year.
yeah, I mean, it turns out there are some aspects of this that I really enjoy. I mean, that Thursday when I had to wait for the documentary crew and talk to them and then talk to the attendees, I was exhausted. I was at the end of my physical capacity, like past it, and I felt so good after that day because I felt like it went about as well as it could have, and I felt like
Mm,
there was a time not that long ago when I would not have done that nearly as well. And I
mm,
and I and I kind of enjoy that sort of like this feels high stakes and it feels like it takes competence and I'm gonna like do what I need to do to make sure I can step up. I'm not there with the interpersonal safety conflict stuff. That is still kind of an ongoing process. We've seen a lot less of it though.
mm,
I think that a lot of that, there's some. Then we have some incident reports and things like that to go through, but I think a lot of that were kind of like pre-existing deep wells of sort of distrust and whisper network things around specific individuals, and kind of when we work through those, we haven't had as many of the really big hard ones,
mm.
but we'll see.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, with our place here, we've just had just the tiniest first glimmer of that, like nothing serious, but enough. It's like, oh yeah, this is coming. This is
Yeah.
the thing we have to deal with. Like we're dealing with humans, and
Yeah.
one of the reasons they're not more collaborative and coordinated is because like it just takes one rupture of trust to then like ripple out and cause all of this heartbreak and anguish and like
Yeah.
yeah, it takes a lot to recover from.
So there are different people in the scene who are kind of thinking about, big next steps, like long range next steps. I think that there are a lot of people who are thinking about, what happens when we have a lot more sort of coordination along economic lines. What happens if we have a lot more coordination along kind of like governmental lines of like, does a group of people want to get together and come up with like an opt-in sort of like system of governance, that kind of thing. One thing that I think a lot about is can we have sort of a parallel justice system, basically, like a council of people. Like there are some people that we've asked not to attend because they're in kind of like an active mental health crisis, and that feels terrible. And I can't have them at the event. And I would love to have a group of people to send them to kind of watch their progress and to like give them resources and be like, hey, like once you meet these kind of like metrics, you're welcome back. It's something I care a lot about, and I think we could get there. I think like just
Yeah,
extrapolating forward the amount of coordination that's been happening over time, but it's not something I have capacity to do, and it probably shouldn't be. But it
yeah,
really, really cool if we get to a point where we do have people who are doing that.
yeah. I mean, again, not to be brutal, but if we can't get people to buy their tickets until 12 hours before closing time and say, how are we going to get them to show up for
This
jury
is,
duty? And, like,
this is long term. This is very long
yeah,
term. It's not not in the next year or two, but I could see it. I think we'll solve these problems.
yeah, yeah, yeah. With this new format, if you're not going to be, employed 24/7 to be all vibe camp all the time, do you have any hunches about what, if you're going to be doing, say, 3 months of the year on this, like what to do with the other 3/4 of the year?
Yeah, I've been lightly exploring some things. I sort of have a rough shape in my mind of of a like pop-up city type of thing. Like I know kind of which people I'd want to get involved. I know kind of like what I want it to look like. And I think that, Fatopia, there's also a Zen Center in California that has this model of, it's tourism or event space or whatever. So I think if you bought like and I haven't really done serious work looking into this, but I think if you bought like raised money for some kind of existing resort in Mexico or someplace like that, and then just shut it down for a couple months of the year, I think that would take some of the sting out of the like financial risk of,
Mm.
you've at least got sort of like year round like money coming in. But I also think, that's going to be a many year project. And I also have this whole what was supposed to be my main quest, which was like writing a memoir and giving talks about my history and things like that. So I think, I had already come to my parents' house when the mold thing happened at the group house I was living in at the embassy. So maybe I should just take this summer to write. And so that is my rough plan right now. I'm not paying rent anyway. I don't really need income. It's kind of like a good transition point. And like, if I am going to launch into like a very intensive, like high pressure, long range venture, I might like, when else am I going to have time to stop and do this? So that is what I am thinking.
Mm. Mexico's nice.
Also, Colby lives there. He could live outside.
Ah, ah. I was thinking maybe I need to steal Colby. We can share him. We can share him. Sounds like he's very efficient.
So I think that's actually part of what's been really great is we have sort of not sent him off, but like, he's gone to work for other orgs a few times. He was at Vitalia for a number of months. He was at Viva Tower for a little while, and he always comes back with like new ways of doing things. And it's been neat to be to have the ability to be that flexible of like,
Mm.
because Vibe Camp isn't really a 40-hour a week job when we're doing year round, and
Yeah.
that it helped a lot. So yes, you can I would be very thrilled for you to borrow him.
Very good. Very good at scheming. Um, 2026 total eclipse. Is Vibecamp going to have an opinion about it?
I love Vibe Camp. I don't know that I love running events.
Uh,
And so I've been trying to be better. Like I saw those tweets and I was just like, oh, should we? But also just I really like the idea of kind of doing other things for a while.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Plus, if we don't do it, it sounds like people really want it to happen, so maybe somebody else will do it.
yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I can easily predict there's going to be lots of sort of clusters of 20 and 30 people because those venues are easier to find, and like coordinating at that scale is pretty doable. And like an eclipse, who would not want to go and hang out with cool people at an eclipse and worship the sun? But I wonder if there'll be something on a bigger scale than that.
Yeah. Also, we are, and I will talk to the team more, even if we don't do one, and I'm leaning away from it, but even if we don't, we like a bunch of us are very, very available for like pretty active advising and mentoring, like just
Yeah,
always.
yeah, cool, cool. Which does remind me as well, this came up before. Assuming that there are this flourishing, that it's not just like the office hours, but actually there's like um smaller scale organizers stepping up to say like I want to contribute to the scene, I want to make it cool.
Yeah.
I just want to let people know there is a group chat for Twitter organizers where we can kind of share their skills and knowledge and warnings about who are creeps that you should not invite to your event. Unfortunately, like an important part of the job is knowing who the creeps are.
Yeah.
So reach out to Brooke or me, and we'll drop you in there if you're an organizer and you want to, yeah, be sharing tips and knowledge and getting encouragement and getting people to tell you everything's going to be fine. This is just the bit that sucks. It's going to get better.
And I do
Um,
think, we've kind of talked occasionally over the years of doing an organizers event of just retreat of all the organizers. And I think we're probably getting closer. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but I think that will eventually be something that would be really valuable to have happen.
yeah, Yeah, and I was actually wondering, this might be a conversation to have off the record, but I'll just do it on the record. Um, I was wondering about running an organizer's event here at our place, and if there might be someone that just has the kind of sponsorship money that they can, because all 80,
We're all
90% of the
broke.
organizers are all broke because they're just like super generous and very skilled.
Yep.
And I'm like, is there a sponsor out there that wants to basically throw 50 grand at like putting together the most high concentration of effective organizers, and we can like juice some kind of documentation, some kind of knowledge resource at the other side. But for me, that would be just a really gratifying thing to do here, sort of early next year or something like that.
Yeah,
Just 20
that'd be
people,
great.
25 people that we really respect that have got a great track record, I think could have a really high impact.
Yeah, it's hard to remember to check in with people and to share updates and to share information. And you kind of it's very easy to kind of get focused on your own thing, and you also lose track of what other people don't know. So just having a dedicated chunk of time where we're just talking about random things that come up over dinner would be super valuable.
And we have an extremely lovely place in the forest in Barcelona, so it's like who wouldn't want to come?
Yeah, is now a good time to share a little bit more about kind of what's going on with that? We touched on that in the beginning or
Mm?
before we started recording.
Yeah, how much should I go into? I short version is I want to live in a neighborhood surrounded by people that I'm really inspired by. And that's a kind of coordination problem of like, how do you get the people to make a decision at the same time to go somewhere? And the project we're doing here, Castillo, outside of Barcelona, is like, it's the step before the neighborhood. It's a guest house, it's a retreat center, it's a co-living hub where it's like the top of the funnel, lots of people coming, we get to meet both existing friends, get to deepen their relationships with each other, but also there's like quite a good mix of new people that have no pre-existing contact with this network coming in as well. Um, and I think from that we get to really test like who here is sufficiently excited about a different way of living that they want to make, really serious decisions about, oh yeah, I want to buy a house nearby these other people that are buying a place. So there's that thing, that like recruiting pipeline. And then the other thing is just like personally for me and me and my wife Nati, can we build a business that is kind of like gonna be this revenue engine so that we can afford to be part of this neighborhood, So like the business is the guest house. It's like
Right.
uh yeah, the co-living weeks we've been doing have been really, really sweet. Like there's this like gradual, I think we've just finished the fourth one. We're iterating what does the actual model look like? It's like minimum viable structure. Like there's a certain degree of people just doing their own thing. But then the way that it worked with the last week was like basically every day there was some kind of peer support, like a peer coaching practice or some kind of like, we're actually gonna support you guys to collaborate on stuff that matters. And also basically every day there was something fun, so like a dance workshop or a party, or like someone was introducing us to singing in a fun, easy way,
Oh,
like, and that to me, like, just feels like normal life, but just turned up to 11. Like you're
yeah.
doing your work
Love
thing,
it.
you're doing your socializing thing, you're doing your learning thing, and you're like in this incredible natural environment. And because it's us, all of the practical things are really smooth. And everyone's just like, wow, life can be this way. And yeah, seeing the transformation in people is so satisfying to watch what happens. It's just kind of like, what would you be like if you just had all of the companionship and support that you need and you were surrounded by inspiring people every day? Like, turns
Yeah.
out most people, that's a huge glow up.
Right. That's
And
incredible. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, question is, can we do we have enough audience, enough pulling power to do this like basically 1 week every month, and get at least, yeah, I think the sweet spot is basically 10 to 20 people. Like it doesn't have to be huge. The small is
Yeah.
actually nice. It makes things simple. And we'll just gradually iterate the model. But if we can pull that off, then it's like basically our business model is sorted, and then we can go to the bank and say, hey, we want to start this neighborhood. We've got a business model. let's get
Yeah.
started. So that's where we're at. It's hilarious, fun, and extremely stressful, and just vibe with a lot of what you've said in the last hour.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I just think that's the progression. That's where a lot of these things are going and should be going. I think, I think that's kind of one of the areas where I feel like we collectively are doing something pretty unique. I think that we are sort of at the cutting edge of people who, for a while now, people have gone like, oh, I can meet the people like me on the internet. And I think it is fairly recent that people are starting to be like, wait a minute, what do you do with that?
Mm.
And figure out ways to do that well. So it's
Mm.
I don't know. I think it's really cool.
I mean, and it's not just friends from the internet, right? Like I'm just thinking about what these friends have in common, and it is to me, it just pretty clearly is an avant-garde subculture.
Yeah,
Like it is at the frontier of something.
yeah,
Um, like I was just thinking about 20 minutes ago, you were talking about something stressful, and then you noticed that you had gotten yourself like amped up, and then you took a breath and come back down, and like this kind of self-awareness and actively regulating your nervous system, it's not that common, like
yeah.
that's kind of like it's only a tiny example, but it's kind of a wizard
Right.
move. And when you're surrounded by people that are all doing that, that are operating, I really don't want to say level of consciousness, but that have a kind of attentiveness, a kind of
Right.
cognitive complexity, a kind of care, a stack of developmental practices. Like when you put those people in the same space, it's like, oh, finally, like I'm sane and I'm not the weird one. Actually, I'm the normal one, and everyone out there is weird. Um, it's so supercharging, when you get to be in a
Absolutely.
context like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always tell people, I don't remember if I've told you this story, is somewhat tangentially related, but it's what came to mind. I remember in college, I had kind of developed this friend group where I mean, we were using a lot of cocaine, but we would use it and we would talk about, we were doing shadow work without really knowing the term shadow work. We would try to like uncover our patterns and figure out why we were the way we were and why other people were. And it was I mean, it was what I lived for. And I sort of, when I moved out of that city, I lost that friend group and I didn't know how to replicate it. I didn't know how to find that again. And that was, it's really hard to say what could have been different, but I feel like that was a crossroads for me. I feel like that's
Mm.
kind of when I started going deep into heroin and, I'd lost a spark in my life. And I feel like if I were that age and in that place in life and I found this scene of people, that would have been the spark for me. And so that's another thing that I think about when I think about, do we want mainstream attention? Even if it's distorted, someone's going to be like, what the, and we actually had somebody who came to Vibecamp who they were going down a rabbit hole on kind of like neurodiversity Twitter and found all this scene and learned about it. And they went to our school for the socially inept event and they were just like, whoa, and they were, and they were a really great part of Vibecamp. And I feel like, it's those people who see just a little breadcrumb somewhere. They're just like, that doesn't, what is that? And they fall down the rabbit hole. I feel like those are some of the people that are, we kind of want to leave breadcrumbs for. Um, and yeah, it's just incredibly powerful. I think the combination also of all the tweets around, in addition to all this IRL stuff where you're seeing people working through their problems and
Mm.
one person working through it in a certain way might not resonate with you, but then someone else saying it in a slightly different way, you might be like, oh, that's and it just really feels like there's so much growth happening and it's really cool. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and really cool when you have the long-term view, like we've been meeting the same people for 3 or 4 years, and you're like, oh, you actually have grown up. Like
Yeah.
you're a pleasure to be around now. And when I first met you, you were like kind of a terror.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really
I've
sweet.
also noticed, I think 3 or 4 years is, and this is not going to be a universal rule, but I feel like that's around when I start just feeling this sort of baseline warmth and trust for people if I haven't heard that they've done something awful. Because I think at some point your mask will slip and something will happen. And I'm not going to hear about every single one, but I'm going to hear about a lot of them. And so if I haven't heard about it, it's kind of like, all right, you're cool. Like we can,
Can you share your list of awful people?
Yeah, privately.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Be warned, everyone. We have a list.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling the heat in this room is starting to fry my brain. So I think I want to wrap us up. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if there's anything, I don't know. There's like obviously so many topics and threads around this event, around this network. Is there anything that needs to be said? I don't know, any message for the reader or anything that's just still in your mind that we haven't talked on?
I mean, one of the things that comes to mind, and I think broadly the scene is very good about this, but just as a reminder, if you see something that could be better, um,
Mm,
fix it. Step up. I think that's one of the things that's been helping with Vibecamp is a lot more people are, we had one year where Brundolf was just like, your platform is terrible. I'm going to make you a new one. And that was really cool. And I think we're starting to see more of that, but that can be applied to your city, to, not just to Vibecamp, but if you're, hey, I want to hang out with people, start a weekly meetup. If you ever want to, I just open offer, if you are starting a meetup, I recommend starting a group chat in your area. Is a really great way to start. If you tweet about any of these things, send it to me. I will always boost these. Um, and and to Rich, yes. I think there's a lot of people who will help support these things. And yeah, that's just like one of the practices I have where I'm like, ooh, like I wish this thing existed. Oh,
mm,
maybe I should do this thing, or maybe I should
mm.
find people to help me do this thing. I think it's a really great practice to have.
Yeah. Yeah, and extending that, not just we will be willing to boost your tweet, but generally ask for help, ask for help,
Yeah,
ask for help, and
yeah,
we can help you find the people that want to help. Because all this stuff is like it's complicated and nuanced, and no one knows how to do it on their own, and like we're much better
yeah,
together.
yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that. Oh, it was so good to see your face. It's been so long. I hope I can
Yeah.
make it out there soon.
Well, it's gonna happen. It's pretty much
Yeah,
definitely gonna happen. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you,
You
Brooke.
provide such an invaluable service, and I appreciate you.
Ciao.
Bye.